Here is something that should change the way you think about memory loss entirely. According to a major analysis published by the Lancet Commission, up to 45% of dementia cases worldwide are linked to factors we actually have some control over, not fixed genetics, not an unavoidable fate, but everyday modifiable habits. That means a significant portion of the forgetfulness so many people quietly accept as an inevitable part of aging may actually be something we can influence starting today. In this video, we are covering 7 daily habits that may help keep your mind sharp well into your 60s, 70s, and beyond. Stick around until the end, because the 7th habit is the one researchers say is just as powerful as diet or exercise for protecting your brain. And it has almost nothing to do with anything you eat or any workout you do. Before we dive in, if you find value in clear, practical health information like this, take a moment to subscribe to Longevity Insight. This channel is built for people who want to stay sharp, strong, and independent as the years go on. And we release new videos regularly covering exactly the kind of everyday habits that quietly shape how well you age. It takes 2 seconds, and it means you will not miss what is coming next. Now let us talk about your brain. It is also worth mentioning just how widespread the worry about memory loss actually is, even among people who have not experienced any significant changes at all. National survey data has found that a majority of adults over 40 believe cognitive decline is simply inevitable, and nearly half believe it is likely they will develop dementia at some point in their life. This level of anxiety about an outcome that is, for many people, genuinely preventable or at least significantly delayable through everyday habits represents a real disconnect between public perception and what the current research actually shows. Understanding that a substantial portion of dementia risk is modifiable is not just reassuring, it is empowering, because it means the daily choices we are about to walk through are not simply nice suggestions. They represent a genuine, evidence-based opportunity to influence your own cognitive future. First, it helps to draw a clear line between normal age-related forgetfulness and something that deserves medical attention, because this distinction matters enormously and gets confused far too often. Occasionally forgetting where you left your keys, blanking on a familiar name for a moment before it comes back to you, or walking into a room and briefly forgetting why. These are common experiences at any age, and they tend to happen somewhat more frequently as we get older, without necessarily signaling anything serious. What is more concerning is forgetfulness that noticeably interferes with daily functioning, difficulty completing familiar tasks, getting lost in familiar places, repeating the same questions or stories within a short period of time, or significant changes in judgment and personality. If you or someone you love is experiencing this second category of symptoms, that is worth discussing with a doctor promptly, since some causes of cognitive change, including certain vitamin deficiencies, thyroid problems, medication side effects, and depression, are entirely treatable once identified. For everyone else dealing with the more ordinary garden variety forgetfulness that tends to accompany getting older, the habits we are about to walk through have real evidence-backed potential to help keep your mind sharper for longer. Habit number 1 is regular physical activity. This might be the single most well-supported lifestyle factor for supporting brain health as we age, and the mechanism behind it is genuinely fascinating. Physical activity increases blood flow to the brain, delivering more oxygen and nutrients to support neuron function. It also stimulates the release of proteins that support the growth of new neural connections, essentially helping your brain build and maintain the physical infrastructure it needs to process and store information effectively. Research has consistently linked regular aerobic activity, things like brisk walking, swimming, or cycling, with better performance on memory and cognitive testing in older adults, and some studies have even observed measurable differences in brain volume, particularly in the hippocampus, between older adults who exercise regularly and those who remain largely sedentary. Strength training deserves mention here too, since some research suggests resistance exercise offers its own distinct cognitive benefits, alongside the more commonly discussed aerobic activity, meaning a well-rounded routine that includes both walking or swimming, and some form of resistance work may offer the most complete protection. You do not need to run marathons to benefit here. Most research points to moderate activity, something like 30 minutes most days of the week, as sufficient to produce meaningful cognitive benefits over time. Habit number 2 is quality sleep. Sleep is not simply downtime for your brain. It is an active, essential process during which your brain clears out metabolic waste products, including certain proteins that have been specifically linked to cognitive decline when they accumulate excessively over time through a system researchers sometimes call the brain's glymphatic system, essentially a built-in cleaning process that becomes considerably more active during deep sleep than during waking hours. During deep sleep stages, your brain also consolidates memories, essentially transferring information from short-term storage into more permanent long-term memory networks, which is part of why a poor night's sleep can leave things you learned or experienced that day feeling fuzzy or poorly retained the next morning. This is part of why poor sleep, whether from difficulty falling asleep, frequent nighttime waking, or an undiagnosed sleep disorder like sleep apnea, has been consistently linked in research to worse memory performance and, over the long term, higher risk of cognitive decline. If you have been dealing with poor sleep quality, addressing it is not simply about feeling more rested the next day. It is a genuine, evidence-based investment in protecting your long-term cognitive health. And it is worth mentioning that if nighttime waking or persistent daytime fatigue has been a recurring issue for you, we have a full video on this channel walking through the most common causes of disrupted sleep in adults over 60, along with practical strategies that may help. Habit number 3 is a brain-healthy diet. What you eat has a direct measurable relationship with how well your brain functions, both in the short term and over the course of years. Diets rich in vegetables, fruits, whole grains, fish, nuts, and healthy fats like olive oil. Patterns often referred to by researchers as the Mediterranean diet or the MIND diet, which specifically combines elements of the Mediterranean diet with additional emphasis on berries and leafy greens, have been repeatedly associated with slower rates of cognitive decline in long-term studies. These diets tend to be rich in antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds, which appear to help protect brain cells from the kind of oxidative stress and inflammation that can contribute to cognitive aging over time. Fish in particular deserves a specific mention, since the omega-3 fatty acids found in fatty fish like salmon and sardines are structural components of brain cell membranes themselves, meaning adequate intake may directly support the physical integrity of brain tissue rather than simply offering an indirect benefit. On the other hand, diets high in processed foods, refined sugar, and unhealthy fats have been associated with faster cognitive decline in several studies, adding to a growing body of evidence suggesting that what ends up on your plate matters just as much for your brain as it does for your waistline or your heart. Habit number 4 is managing stress. Chronic ongoing stress keeps your body producing elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol, and prolonged exposure to high cortisol levels has been linked in research to changes in a brain region called the hippocampus, an area specifically responsible for forming new memories, with some studies observing that chronically elevated cortisol is associated with actual shrinkage in this region over time. This does not mean occasional everyday stress is dangerous to your brain. That kind of stress is a normal part of life, and in short bursts it can even sharpen focus and performance. The concern is specifically chronic, unmanaged stress that persists over months and years without relief. Practices like regular physical activity, which we already discussed, along with meditation, deep breathing exercises, time spent in nature, or simply engaging in hobbies you genuinely enjoy, have all been shown to help regulate the body's stress response over time, offering a real protective benefit for brain health alongside their more obvious benefits for overall well-being. Habit number 5 is staying mentally active. Your brain, much like a muscle, tends to function better when it is regularly challenged rather than left idle. Activities that require active problem solving, learning something new, or engaging deeply with unfamiliar material. Things like puzzles, reading, learning a new language or musical instrument, or picking up a new hobby entirely, appear to help build what researchers call cognitive reserve, essentially a buffer of additional neural connections and pathways that can help your brain continue functioning well, even as some natural age-related changes occur. This is part of why researchers have observed that people with higher levels of lifelong mental engagement, whether through education, occupation, or hobbies, sometimes show fewer outward symptoms of cognitive decline, even when underlying brain changes are present, since their brains have effectively built more alternate pathways to work around any localized difficulties. It is worth noting that novelty appears to matter more than repetition here, meaning that doing the same familiar crossword puzzle every single day likely offers less benefit than periodically challenging yourself with genuinely new material. Whether that means switching up the type of puzzle, tackling an unfamiliar subject, or picking up an entirely new skill that requires your brain to build fresh neural pathways rather than simply reinforcing ones that are already well established. Habit number 6 is proper hydration, a factor that gets far less attention than it deserves. Your brain is composed of a remarkably high percentage of water, and even mild dehydration has been shown in research to negatively affect concentration, short-term memory, and overall cognitive performance, sometimes producing effects noticeable within just an hour or two of inadequate fluid intake. Older adults are particularly vulnerable to this issue, since the sense of thirst naturally becomes less reliable with age, meaning it is entirely possible to become meaningfully dehydrated without ever feeling particularly thirsty. This means cognitive fog or difficulty concentrating that shows up later in the day might, for some people, be as simple and fixable as not having consumed enough water since breakfast. Making a conscious effort to drink water consistently throughout the day rather than waiting for thirst to prompt you is a remarkably simple habit with a genuinely meaningful potential impact on daily mental clarity. And now, habit number 7, the one I promised you at the beginning, staying socially connected. This is the habit that consistently surprises people, because on the surface, it seems to have little to do with brain function in any direct measurable way. But the research here has become increasingly difficult to ignore. Social isolation and loneliness have been identified in major research reviews as significant independent risk factors for cognitive decline and dementia, with some studies suggesting the impact is comparable in magnitude to other well-known risk factors like physical inactivity or poor diet. The reasoning behind this connection makes sense once you understand it. Meaningful social interaction requires your brain to actively engage in a whole range of complex cognitive processes simultaneously, following conversation, interpreting tone and body language, recalling shared history, and formulating responses in real time, all of which provide a kind of natural built-in cognitive workout that is difficult to replicate through any other single activity. Beyond the direct cognitive engagement, strong social connections also tend to reduce stress, encourage healthier behaviors, and provide a sense of purpose and emotional support, all of which circle back to support brain health through the other pathways we have already discussed. This connection has taken on particular importance in recent research specifically focused on multiracial and diverse older adult populations, where studies examining social isolation alongside other modifiable risk factors for dementia have consistently flagged loneliness as one of the most significant and, encouragingly, one of the more addressable factors identified. Unlike some other risk factors that require significant lifestyle overhauls, addressing social isolation can be as straightforward as scheduling a regular phone call with a family member, joining a local club or class, volunteering in your community, or simply making a point to have a genuine, unhurried conversation with someone you care about on a regular basis. This is precisely why doctors and researchers increasingly emphasize maintaining friendships, family relationships, and community involvement as we age, not simply for emotional well-being, though that matters enormously on its own, but as a genuinely protective factor for long-term cognitive health that deserves to be taken every bit as seriously as diet and exercise. Now that we have covered all 7 habits, let us talk briefly about some of the other common causes of memory changes that are worth understanding, since not every instance of forgetfulness stems purely from lifestyle factors. Certain vitamin deficiencies, particularly vitamin B12, can produce memory problems and cognitive fog, and this deficiency becomes considerably more common with age due to changes in how the digestive system absorbs this particular nutrient. Thyroid problems, both an underactive and an overactive thyroid, can also produce noticeable changes in memory, concentration, and mental clarity, and this is a condition that becomes more common with age and is often overlooked as a potential explanation for cognitive symptoms. Certain medications, including some used for allergies, sleep, anxiety, and other common conditions, can carry side effects that affect memory and mental sharpness, particularly in older adults, who often metabolize medications differently than younger adults do. Chronic health conditions like uncontrolled diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and untreated sleep apnea have all been linked to cognitive changes as well, largely because they affect blood flow, oxygen delivery, and overall physiological stress on the brain over time. And finally, depression, which can sometimes be mistaken for or coexist with cognitive decline in older adults, deserves mention here too, since treating underlying depression sometimes leads to genuine improvement in memory and concentration that had been attributed to something else entirely. This is exactly why persistent, worsening, or functionally disruptive memory changes deserve a proper medical evaluation, rather than being automatically chalked up to normal aging. A doctor can help identify whether an underlying treatable cause might be contributing to the symptoms you're experiencing, and catching something like a vitamin deficiency or a thyroid imbalance early can sometimes lead to genuinely meaningful improvement. Something that simply would not happen if the symptoms were assumed to be an unavoidable part of getting older and never investigated further. There is one more thing worth mentioning before we close, and it speaks to why researchers increasingly study these habits together rather than in isolation. The multi-domain lifestyle trials currently underway in several countries, including large studies specifically examining combined interventions across diet, exercise, cognitive training, and social engagement simultaneously, are finding that these habits appear to work best in combination rather than as isolated changes. This makes intuitive sense once you think about it. A body that is well rested, properly hydrated and physically active tends to also handle stress more effectively. And a person who is socially engaged is often more likely to stay mentally active and maintain healthier daily routines as a natural byproduct of that connection. You do not need to overhaul every single habit on this list overnight to see benefit. Picking one or two areas where you know you are currently falling short and building consistency there first is a genuinely reasonable and evidence-supported way to start, with the other habits often becoming easier to adopt once the first few are firmly in place. I want to leave you with this thought before we close. Your brain, much like the rest of your body, responds remarkably well to consistent, everyday care, and the habits we covered today, staying physically active, prioritizing quality sleep, eating a brain-supportive diet, managing stress, keeping mentally engaged, staying properly hydrated, and nurturing your social connections are not complicated or expensive interventions. They are simply consistent, achievable choices made day after day that together build a genuinely protective foundation for your cognitive health over the years ahead. None of them guarantee that memory changes will never happen. Aging affects every one of us in some way. But the research is clear that these habits meaningfully shift the odds in your favor, offering you a real, evidence-based way to take an active role in protecting your own mind, rather than simply waiting to see what happens. If this video gave you something valuable today, I would really appreciate it if you took a moment to leave a comment below and share which of these 7 habits you are already doing well, or which one you are planning to work on starting this week. Your comments genuinely help this channel reach more people who could benefit from this information, and they help shape what we cover in future videos. If you have a parent, spouse, or friend over 60 who could use a little encouragement to stay mentally sharp, please consider sharing this video with them today. It might be exactly the motivation they need to build one new habit into their routine. And if you have not subscribed to Longevity Insight yet, now is a great time to do it. We are building a community here focused on clear, practical, science-based guidance for staying sharp, strong, and independent at every stage of life, with more videos on heart health, bone health, and gut health already on the channel and plenty more on the way. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload, and I will see you in the next video. Here is to a sharper mind, a fuller life, and many more years of feeling like yourself.